to look at the minutes? I saw some people that were still reading. We good? All right, anybody have substantive changes to the minutes that we need to make before we approve them?
I just want to thank Amy for sending me hers electronically beforehand. It makes things a lot easier. You don't have to, but if you happen to look at when I send them out and you have a change for me, it's a lot easier to do that than to change it out.
Good tip. Thanks, Amy. Okay, so, sorry, I'm still chewing. Bill, you want to move?
I second move
To approve the minutes as written? Second? Linda? All right, all in favor of approving the minutes as written, show of hands and aye. Aye. All opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you, minutes are adopted. We do accept. Okay. For the agenda, the change that I need to make.
Yeah,
We have some. No, we just need.
majority. You have to have majority, simple majority.
Oh, don't we have 13?
No, 14.
No, we have 14. Okay, where's Diallo? I thought he was.
But the Myra thing, if Myra, what?
Oh, yeah.
You were right on
You were
Myra's-
right.
Myra's
Okay.
on leave.
So Myra is on an approved leave, so she does not count, that's why I was thinking 13. So
Yeah.
she does not count for purposes of a quorum. Yes. Yeah,
Thank you.
Amy pointed that out to us.
Happy birthday.
So we do have a quorum today because our official number is 13 for purposes of a
All
quorum.
right.
Thank you, Amy.
Fascinating, those 5 hours.
Onward,
I know. So, okay, so minutes are approved. Meeting agenda does need to be changed. I mistakenly placed the Emily G. Gottfried Human Rights. Well, I guess maybe we were just going to recap.
You took up the notes.
Oh, is that what we were going to do is recap?
Because you had like volunteers and stuff like that.
Okay. Well, I was just going to kind of thank everybody and announce it right now. So why don't we just move that 10 minutes down into committee task force.
So we do it in place of Dante?
Updates? Yeah, let's do that. Thank you. Are there any other changes to the agenda that anybody sees?
Well, Dale's pretty crucial, he's not pretty, he's crucial to the roundtable report, and he's on his way. Sorry.
Well, why don't we switch upcoming events and roundtable report so that we can give a little extra time?
Thank you.
That work? All right, so we're going to switch items 4 and 5 on the agenda as well. Any other changes anyone would like to see?
Do we need Sonji for the safe and sound update?
Yes.
No, Shoji's not going to be here.
Okay, but you do need her.
Well, I'll tell you about it.
Oh, okay.
What do we
Yeah,
have
she
to
said,
tell us about it?
I'll do it. She told me about it. Although, you might know more than I do, for as far as attendance at the event goes, but
We'll see.
we'll talk about that. Okay, so, can I get a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved. Second.
Seconded by Abdul. Hey, Dylan. All in favor of approving the agenda as amended, show of hands and aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions?
Nice hat.
Diallo's going to abstain from that one.
It's official.
You're abstaining from,
Okay. Agenda is approved. So, we have the second annual Emily G. Gottfried Human Rights Awards, first time being called the Emily G. Gottfried Human Rights Awards yesterday. Thanks to everybody who was able to attend and everybody who participated in that. That was a very successful event. We've been getting a lot of really positive reaction from award recipients, from the folks at City Hall. I've gotten a couple of emails from City Hall saying how uplifting and inspiring that event was. I spoke to Dante after the event. He was very impressed, happy to be there. I spoke to the Attorney General after the event. She just was incredibly impressed and was honored to be a part of it. And most importantly, spoke to Jeff Gottfried and Benna Gottfried and some of Emily's family who were there, and they were moved really touched by the sentiments that were expressed there and all the participation. And so congratulations to everybody who participated in that. That was a really well executed event. And so thanks to everybody who participated. I want to especially thank Jeff. I know that this was a full-time job for you for like a long period of time. And it was executed really professionally. It was, I mean, I walked in there and just saw the layout, and it was just obvious that somebody knew what they were doing. And so we're really lucky to have had your skill set and your dedication. So thank you, Jeff, especially. That was awesome.
It had to be good.
It had to be.
We didn't have an option. It had to be great this year.
And it really was. Yeah.
I just want to say, I'm somebody who, I don't automatically get those kind of events, you know, the symbolic stuff. I want to be out doing something, but this event helped me get it, why we would spend time doing it, because it was inspiring, and it did get a bunch of people in one room who are looking at a similar vision. So that was really powerful, and I think we should mark those two results.
I think that's right. I mean, when you can get Lou Friedrich, the keynote speaker, to say that the Human Rights Commission is an incredibly important commission and that the city needs to continue supporting the Human Rights Commission with the mayor, Nick Fish, Amanda Fritz, the Attorney General, policy advisors, all in the room, that's a big step. Nick Fish actually came up to me and said that you created a lot of momentum in this event for the Human Rights Commission. And so it might be more ceremonial, but it allows us to do that groundwork, I think. So I think it's just, that was a really, really effective example of how we can bring those people together to see what we're all about.
I think it was important that for anyone here or who wasn't here who got on their emails and their phone to reach out to people to get them to the lunch. We sold out tickets right before the deadline for tickets ended. We had a lot more people calling and emailing afterward. I know Kyle was really working the phones and email pretty hard. I know I was. Sharon Gary Smith also filled 2.5 tables with people who came there to support the program. So I don't know if it could have done any better. I just think it was great to get this group in front of those people for that event. So it worked out really well.
So thanks so much, everybody. That was great. Please, yeah.
I just also want to thank Alan and of course Jeff. That was wonderful. And the flow, I know, was more people than the table. Some of them showed up without making reservations, and you handled really well. The flow was really good. Was more food and more spaces. Even opened the toilet, which like nothing seen that is going wrong at all. I appreciate that, and also like your support and also your help and Amy being there. Really, whoever works on this, we appreciate you as well. It's not an easy event, as I said, but also it was great to have. I want to thank also the mayor and all the people from City Hall who showed up to support it, and also the president of AMA that showed up. That is really nice. Also support from AMA as well. So it went all wonderful. I loved it. In future, maybe just one suggestion is maybe having Amanda Fritz also to give an award or to speak or something, because she's our commissioner. And
The mayor's right.
She's not anymore.
oh, she's not anymore.
She is an enthusiastic supporter.
Yeah.
But
the first one in my
I actually I thanked Jeff afterward because Jeff pointed out that she was the first person to buy a ticket, and she was really the one who was coming without condition. You know, I mean, she was an unconditional supporter of this event, and it was fantastic.
There were no requests from our staff to do that. I think it's something to keep in mind. She is a huge supporter of not only the commission, but certainly the Office of Liberty and Human Rights, and that's just evident in everything that she's been doing. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
So because also she was working with us closely before, so you want
Absolutely.
to not leave that maybe in the future, in any capacity or something.
Well,
like that.
and I think that it would be a nice thing to send a note to her, thanking her. I was thinking about doing that personally.
Yeah, I was,
And I was thinking about doing that to kind of all of them.
well, definitely, yeah.
But yeah, I think you're right. It's important to acknowledge the participation of our electeds. So, and I also think Linda brought Kurt along, so we should definitely thank the McKinn-Bell family.
Linda and Kurt and Alan and Kofi and Patrick Philpott, who took all the photos, but they also came early to help set up, and Kyle as well. And that if I didn't have that group with me yesterday morning, it would not have gone as smoothly.
So great teamwork all around, everybody. Thanks so much. Let's keep our eye on next December. We're doing it again. And Linda, you're going to spearhead the planning for that. I think the first thing to do is something that Jeff and I were both pushing a little bit yesterday, and that's talking to Northwest Natural on trying to get them to donate everything again. And they actually, they've agreed to do it already. So that's pretty great.
Yeah,
I
so
mean,
we should just go ahead and pick a date. I mean,
Yeah.
look at the calendar and pick a date and say,
Well,
making one of those things that people attend every year. You know, I think Commissioner Fisher's right. I think the momentum coming out of this is important. And I think a big part was created by the folks over there.
Yeah, and Kyle and I are gonna work together to make sure we get the right letters of thanks and praise for Kathy and her team to her boss.
Yeah.
And I know Grant, Yoshihara is a vice president there, and he needs to know about it as well. So definitely we need to treat Northwest Natural well.
Let's show our thanks to them. So yeah, well, it'll be great, and thank you, Diallo, for coordinating the planning of it this year. I mean, that was a huge task for you, just coming in as vice chair right away, and that was your big thing to make sure everybody got in the right places, and you did it, so thank you very much for that. All right, so thanks everybody, great job, and we'll look forward to another great event next year, and continue to honor Emily's legacy that way.
Delta, you came in just in time, or did we amend
We
it?
did switch that.
Okay, well, let's just go to upcoming events then, since we switched it.
Oh, I should jump in and make an announcement.
Okay.
So I started this week, working thus far temporary position with my supervisor being Tom Bizot in Amanda Fritz's office. So yeah, essentially, that office is employing me
Wow.
to help implement the paid sick leave ordinance, so doing field work for that. So that's relevant to what we're doing now that I have a paycheck coming from them at least through January 31st. And one of the things that brings up for me as we're working on organizational stuff is I'd like to suggest we develop a culture of recusal, where if anybody feels like we're in a position, if our employment particularly is vulnerable, if we don't feel like we can entirely separate our objectivity with the conversation or anything else, particularly a vote, that we have the right to recuse, as well as somebody can suggest that. So I just will table that, and I'll bring that up as we weave in more organizational stuff.
Okay, well, thanks for the full
Yeah.
disclosure on that one.
Yeah.
I don't see anything in our current bylaws that would prevent anybody from making their own conscientious decision to not participate in something or other that they feel might be a conflict, but, so.
Do you feel your role as liaison to that office is?
That might be the one.
That's the one, yeah, and so this opportunity came entirely outside of her arena. It came through a very different avenue than any communications that I've had with her, directly through her chief of staff. So she and I haven't had a chance to talk about that. He's leaving it up to me. So we can talk about it, absolutely.
And we're sort of in the process after losing John and then Ashley bowing out and being a liaison, that Amy and I were the only currently ongoing liaisons. So
it's all
we're sort of in the process of redistributing the liaison relationships anyway, so that's something that we'll probably be discussing, I would imagine, in January as well. So, for now, I am the only liaison. Is that how this is working? Really? All right.
Did you officially?
No, I mean,
I'm just
if,
kidding.
okay.
But yeah, we'll talk about that
If I
later.
let that go, you are.
She can liaise
You
to
can-
other.
You can liaise to anyone, well, we'll talk about it. Okay, thank you, Amy, for the full disclosure there.
Congratulations.
And congratulations, yeah.
And happy birthday.
Yeah, and happy birthday. Oh, speaking of which, I better pass these around.
I noticed you put them right next.
Yeah, we think pass these around.
Yes, do pass them around. Thank you.
Thank you.
We can do a Sam did. Nice. It's like Fort Knox.
Okay, so we have some upcoming events that we should discuss. The first is the United Nations Association Human Rights Day event. That's coming up, where's my note for my notes? It is next week, I believe. Yeah, it's next Tuesday, the 10th, from 5:30 to 7 at the First United Methodist Church, Collins Hall. At the last meeting, we discussed this, and there were a few people who volunteered to table at that event. I just want to make sure that we've got that.
Should be meeting
confirmed.
minutes.
I'm looking at it now.
I
Looks like
volunteered.
Linda, Sam, Diallo, and Abdul. And Linda and Jeff will prepare the table display and handouts in coordination with Sonji. I know that, oh, Sonji. I don't know about the handouts.
I met with Soji on content. And so I have to have Linda look at the panels, but we're going to have to get those to the printer tomorrow.
Oh, wow, good.
Okay, and didn't Glenn send like a flyer? Did you get that? There was an email, I thought Glenn sent out a flyer that she had put together, but it was a pretty rough draft, it looked like to me.
I think the only thing I got from Gwen was the mayor's confirmation.
Okay, well, I'll forward that to you.
Me and my truck, she had some sitting on the table. At the event.
Oh my gosh, God.
I bet your shirt and your hat.
All right, I'll forward that to you later, about next year. I'll get that to you. So are we confirmed then that we've got Linda, Sam, Diallo, and Abdul tabling at the event? Everybody knows where to go, when to be there.
What is the address for?
Uh,
Is it downtown?
First United Methodist Church, I don't know where that is.
Yeah.
It's in Goose Hollow.
Who's Hollow?
Okay.
Sorry.
Goose Hollow? Okay.
Right up against the hill.
Oh,
I can
It's
follow
on
that.
about
The-
Main.
Do you
Yeah.
use
okay.
Google Calendar?
The First United Methodist Church in Collins Hall.
Yeah.
I'll figure it out.
It's where that Collins traffic circle is at the end of Jefferson Street.
Okay.
Is it near a park?
It's near Goose Hollow Park.
Near B&W Street.
Got it, I'll find it.
Was the church.
Okay, so everybody knows where they're going, knows what they've got to do for that event?
Right, and Jeff, you like to see things up to bring.
Well, yeah, but you know where to be, I guess.
Physically.
Yeah.
No, is there anything specific? Seriously.
I'll talk to you about
Just
that.
be there, talk about human rights.
Yeah, just be staffing the table. I think usually a table fits about 2 people, so 2 people can kind of wander around. Try to remember, which I never do, your name tags. I know. And we've got the trifold now.
Not yet. Oh, yeah, we have the full, we just haven't, we don't have any content on it yet.
Oh, okay. Are we gonna have
It's been
anything?
approved by Sonji, I've got to get it through Linda, and I've got to get it printed, and
Okay.
so we'll,
Can we just like stick a Human Rights Commission button on that thing or that big? Yeah, right in the middle. So
we'll have something.
Okay.
Yeah, we from those blue things and any flyers, for sure.
So the declaration.
Yeah, can we have the business card by that time?
We have business cards.
I keep hearing there are business cards.
Just gone.
They were at the event yesterday.
With our names
Do
on
we
it?
have them in our
No,
What's your name?
they're generic.
I think we need to have them with our names.
Do you have any copies here at the office today? So
Talk to Sonji. Sonji's the communications person.
I'm sure you
Oh, okay.
So she's organizing all that marketing stuff.
Yeah, because people keep asking, who are you? Then we feel to say, okay, who to call here?
Right, yeah, a lot of
We
people have
discussed
said
at the
that.
last meeting to have space to put our names on the back or something, but I think that there's copies here, so I think we should get something for you. Just the ones that we do have.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea, get the generic ones, and then I think if you have suggestions about like getting new marketing type materials, then talk to Sonia, because she's in charge of all that.
And can those be available to us in the closet? The ones we have now, and if we get
They're
a
in
new
the closet.
version?
They're
Yeah.
probably in a bag near my desk right now from yesterday, but.
Yeah, so if you're not around, that we can just walk in there, pick them up, okay.
And I talked to Tanya in
Well, yeah.
Dante's office, you don't wanna just walk in and.
There's no sense.
But yeah, I think, anytime, I mean, that stuff is all sort of overseen by this office, so if anybody needs cards, things like that, the thing to do is to contact the office, contact Jeff, I guess.
So it'd be $60 times 50
For what?
for any business card or?
For individuals, we'll go through the communications committee to do that. So Sonji will be the person to talk to about that. And you can make your comments to Sonji.
I'm not making comments, I'm just saying, budget-wise, that's what people need to understand.
I know.
Those things cost money.
So how many for?
Well, we can talk about it, I'm sorry.
Copy that.
Yeah, thank you.
Right.
Okay, so we're set on
So
the
just
UNA event.
Yeah, I wanted to admit that there is a request of business cards, personal business cards, and Sanjay will be the person who communicates with, etc.
Okay.
It keeps coming for like 2 years now, or plus, before Jeff, before this issue.
Okay, well, and that's why we've set up the communications committee, because we want to have a person who's going to see that through, and it's not just people talking about it. All right. So we're set on the UNA event. We've got our volunteers, and if there are any questions about that, the UNA, the United Nations. If there are any questions about that, get a hold of me, and I'll direct people in the right place. Okay. Also, December 12th, there's the Safe and Sound screening. That is taking place at the Rosewood Initiative from 6 to 8 p.m. Last time we discussed this, we weren't sure whether or not there was going to be a panel of HRC commissioners, but since that time, there has been publication that talks about being there to discuss the film with the HRC. And so do you know more about what they're expecting us to do?
Weeks ago, they had a Facebook page up, which was, I believe, their first press or PR about this, and I believe it read a community conversation with human rights commissioners. And then they put a flyer out, which I could pull up, but, so, and then Joanne asked me to co-facilitate that with her. So I'm assuming that will mean that I won't be part of the panel. So, that means we need to know who of us is willing and interested to be.
Is there going to be a panel though? That's the first question. Or is it just people
Well,
talking?
I don't know about that.
Okay. Who's gonna be there? Let's see who's gonna be there. Sam?
Joanne, obviously.
Yeah.
And what's the, I'm sorry, remind me, Safe and Sound, what's the movie
Film,
about?
the filming show.
About?
So, Regional Arts and Culture Council co-sponsored a film from local directors. And the subject matter of each of these, it was more than one film. They put together a few different documentaries, and the subject matter was Portland Police Bureau. And their interactions with specifically communities of color and the killing of a number of people at the hands of the Portland Police Bureau.
I know Aaron Campbell, I believe.
Yeah, that was one of them. That was one of the stories, but there are a number of them. And so the films are really from the perspective of the community and how they're reacting to the Portland Police Bureau and how they're and their interactions with the community. And so this is an opportunity to just dive into that discussion.
So, a couple things. Would it be possible to see
The movie?
Movie before?
I think
I
we
would
mentioned it's
recommend,
online,
I'd
isn't
recommend
it?
that you do.
Okay.
There's
Yeah.
some of it online, and then there's a number of other showings. So I bet if you Google Safe and Sound,
They have their own website.
yeah,
Yeah.
you can see, and there's potential you could stop into one before this event, yeah.
Yeah, I'd recommend anybody who's going to be there to discuss the film that you watch. There are a number of different clips that you can see, but to the extent that you can watch the whole thing, it's long. But to the extent that you can watch the whole thing, I would certainly recommend trying to do that so that you're able to discuss it and come up with your own questions or just be prepared to discuss it when we're there. And I can't be there, I have a class.
I'm interested, but I want to see it first. Be interested to be a part of the panel, but I want to see it first. And the third thing I was going to say is Deanna going to be there?
I don't think so. No, it's not a police bureau or a mayor's office thing. It's in a community. I mean, they can come. She's not excluded,
I
but
think the question is, have they
Yeah.
been reached out to even the
Right.
bureau
Seems like
or the mayor's office? Yeah.
It seems like a good opportunity. If we're going to have that discussion,
Yeah.
it sounds like something that she should be at.
well,
Or she should be invited to.
I would talk to the organizers about that. I mean, we are helping to support the event. We're not organizing the event.
Yeah.
And there may be some sentiment that this is an opportunity for the community to talk amongst themselves.
Okay. Yeah.
But I don't know that for sure, but I would certainly recommend calling Joanne and finding out what she thinks about that and also the other organizers, because I wouldn't want to impose
Right.
that if that's not the idea they had. We just wanted to support the dialogue.
Okay.
At least we work up through whoever is leading our interfacing with them. And I don't know if that's Amy or Sonji. So,
Sonji for the most part.
okay.
Yeah, and it's what I now understand it is a consult Hardesty event. I don't think there's any other organizers. I think Rosewood Initiative is just the space.
They're hosting it, yeah.
Mm.
But she's working with the filmmakers.
So we know that Amy's co-facilitating with Joanne Hardesty. Do we have, when we don't know if there's a panel?
But we do know that, are you going to be there, Sam?
Yeah.
Okay. Diallo, you're going to be there?
Definitely.
Alan, you're going to be there?
I'm
Okay.
out of town.
You're gone. Malloy, are you going to be there? It's the 12th from 6 to 8 p.m.
No.
Okay. Then Abdul, are you going to be there?
Yeah, I'm actually looking for it.
Okay.
So far with Alan, Sam, and Diallo.
And Sonji, I
Are you
think
gonna be there?
I'm
Oh,
in
yeah.
my class.
How many people do we need to be conscious of the quorum?
You can have a quorum as long as you don't talk about business.
Yeah, and I would have to say that,
Does this fall under that?
Is this HRC business? I
think it
think so. But I don't think we're going to have a quorum. Because you're going to have Sam, Diallo, Amy, Alan, maybe Abdul,
maybe some.
and Sonji. That's 6. So I think we're good.
So my event calendar says, if somebody says 5 to 6, it's 6 to 8.
I looked on the flyer and it said 6 to 8 on the flyer.
It's definitely longer than
I have a question. Sam, when you ask about Diane, I'm just curious.
What did I ask about it?
Yeah, in a sense, is anything to be aware of or bothering you or?
Oh, no, I actually talked to her. No, I think that if the film is about the community and the police and the interactions, then I think it's a good opportunity for her to be there to hear, whether it's even just being there to hear, to listen to what the community has to say. I think that would go a long way in showing her commitment to be there, to just even to be to hear what they have to say. So that's what I was thinking.
In her new role.
Correct, in her new role. Yeah, and if she hasn't been, I think it's an opportunity for someone to reach, they may not want her there. But that's what my thinking is.
Okay.
So,
I think it's a great idea to suggest to Joanne that whether you feel that it's important that she be present there. Can't hurt.
So Sonji's not here. Would you be willing to ask Joanne about that, or do you want me to do it?
I'm sure.
Okay. So I just think somebody who's here and discussing it should make sure that we
Joanne was very public.
move forward with that.
Critical of Dan's hire. Dan's.
yes, but when I talked to Deanna, I'm sorry, I'm putting the, Craig, not just on my phone, I'm putting it in here. But when I talked to her, I know that she shared with me that she spoke to the AMA, I don't know if she had a chance to talk to Joanne, so I do know that Deanna's had some
Yeah.
conversations, because when I shared what I shared in the meeting last month, I've also had an opportunity to talk to Deanna personally and shared my views with her, and she shared with me that she's had some conversations. I don't know if one of those is with Joanne.
I understand that Copwatch and an AMA, Council Hardesty, visited with both Deanna and the mayor in a session.
So I just want to say that it's probably imperative that we go, just to get it on our radar, regardless of who else is going to be there. This is an issue that is really cared about among many people, and I know Joanne has been really reaching out to the community and telling the community be there. There's going to be commissioners there to listen to your issues and really focus on those issues. And she's made personal calls out to people, and specifically said the HRC's name in her communication as people who are going to be there to support. So,
Which, by the way, is fantastic.
Yeah.
HRC has been.
Oh, gosh.
It's-
And so
So I think we need to be a little conscious about what our role is there and what the expectation is.
Mhm.
And if this is the way it's being held up, then it seems like there are some expectations that we may not, that I'm not aware of. And so there may be other people involved that are aware of, are we coming out of this with something? I mean, I thought we were just supporting the film and then being there to participate, but it sounds like we may be in sort of a listening session. Or are we actually offering some perspectives? I would prefer to be in a listening mode, but if we're on a panel, that actually seems like it's an output mode.
So she and I will be talking further about how to facilitate this. And
Oh, yeah.
that's right, so that's going to reveal what's our structure. She mentioned next steps, I believe, and so I think that's going to be important to her. But I don't want to continue to speak for her right now.
Okay.
But once that's more clear, I'll pass on as soon as I can information that I know. So, and I want to add to that, it might be helpful for those of us who show up
Yeah.
to get our heads together
Yeah.
about how
I
do we
think
handle
that-
things when we don't agree.
That's right. I exactly think that's true.
Can you make a comment? I think this is a good opportunity, and this is one of the opportunities we talked about before and we mentioned many times. How can we be in the community, whether we're invited or not, as a Human Rights Commission to be existing, because we're still not really existing in some places. And when we are there, it's okay the commissioners to disagree as a commission. I will say, I am a Human Rights Commission talking about human rights tonight, and with all respect, I see a different point of view, because people need to see that, and that is the reality. We are not going to say we should not be disagreeing with each other. But in the meantime, is if we need to be there, that people know we have interest, we are listening, we are hearing or participating. If there is one of us in the panel, we'll support that in the panel, but that doesn't hold us from letting people know I am with the Human Rights Commission, and glad to be here tonight, it's good to make this to hear about it. And just a positive comment, it is great to have, if we want to be, turn off the camera. If you want to be politician about it, even you say, for example, I appreciate people who put the movie together. So you're not saying yes or no, but being supportive there. So this is really about whoever going, and to continue with this, to not hesitate or question ourselves, should I say this or not?
There's
Just to not go out and be.
Sorry, Sam, go ahead.
I was just going to say that, yeah, I think when we're there, to having a better understanding of kind of what our role is really important, because I was part of Senate Bill 11, which deals with the use of deadly force planning authority 3 or 4 years ago, and we had a community event similar. There was no movie, but we had people in the community that came out and they talked about the use of deadly force and some of these killings, and it's a very emotional topic, and people that are on the panel, at least at that panel, became the target of that passion and that emotion. And excuse me, what we did was just listen. We didn't try to defend or make excuses or, for what they were feeling. So I think having a better understanding is really, because I do have, I think I'll have some different views and opinions on the topic than, say, other people, but I don't want my thoughts to be construed as speaking for the Human Rights Commission.
Well, I think that's the only thing that we need to say. There's no reason why we all need to agree on everything. We shouldn't, otherwise we wouldn't be a diverse group, which is part of our charter. We have to be a diverse group, and we should disagree on things. As long as we say, look, this is Kyle, and this is how I feel. You know what, I don't think you need to preface every single statement with, I'm not speaking on behalf of the commission. But, you know, I think that we should be able to state our opinion and disagree with each other, and feel like we can participate in that dialogue, and not feel like we have to preface that. I'm not speaking on behalf of the commission every time. You know, so I don't know if it would be a good idea to say at the outset that there are human rights commissioners here and nobody is here to speak on behalf of the commission itself. We are all individuals who have our own opinions, and we just want to make sure that everybody knows that we're not here speaking in an official capacity on behalf of the Human Rights Commission, and then leave it at that.
I think that's a great idea.
But I think we should be able to say that we're listening on behalf
Right.
of the commission.
Right.
That's
And so
right.
where I think this is maybe what Amy was alluding to was, I think what we do need to agree on is promises that we make about process. We can have different opinions, but we certainly shouldn't disagree about, you know, I don't think one of us can say, you know, you're right, we're gonna pick that up as an issue, right? As a Human Rights Commission or a CPRC, you know, that's an issue that we're going to pick up. I think that's unfair to say. So promises about, that's what I think, that's where I think that it looks bad if in public we are disagreeing about how we work internally.
Yeah.
I think we can disagree all we want about opinion, but if somebody says to us, you know, I think you folks are the ones that are supposed to take care of this, Sam says, you're right, we are. I don't want to say, Sam, actually, I don't think we are. We need to know in our minds how that works for us in general. You know, how we approach it, or if Sam says, I would take it back to the commission, and I said, no, I wouldn't, and disagree about that. But I think those kind of promises about process are what we need to be careful about.
So, oh, go ahead, Dale.
So I think that this is pointing to a need because of our different views and because of the fact that this is a diverse body, that we need to have space to really discuss those views other than this meeting. It just makes sense that if we're going to be fighting as a united body in any way, that we, you know, have some sort of understanding of each other. And I also think that by having an opinion at these kind of events, people automatically think that it's on, you know, your personal radar, and since you're a commissioner, you're bringing that to the table, but we don't really have space to talk about these things, and so we have to have like some type of space other than this. And then maybe we can talk about the retreat, I don't know, but just, you know.
One suggestion. I think it would behoove the commissioners who are going to go to review the best that you can any statements we have made on these issues. I can't remember if the Aaron Campbell shooting occurred. Yeah, I believe we have made statements in the past on use of force, things like that. And you know, so to the extent that you're saying something that's reiterating a position you've already taken, I think you can do that on behalf of the commission. So you release prescription. And but I just think it would be good to be prepared because, you know, if the audience or Joanne or whoever knows about these past statements and wants to question you about them, you're going to want to seem like you're familiar with them.
I think there was a use of force recommendation report in spring or summer of 2011. That Stephen Manning, before he was commissioner, helped put together. I don't know who was a part of that, but that might be something along those lines. What's that? Were you involved with that? Do you have a copy of that report?
I would go back. I keep
Okay.
Might be online.
Yeah, it probably is online. And that would be in the,
It's pretty technical.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm not sure if it is.
It's
Okay.
pretty technical, it's about the directors.
okay.
So what's a good plan for us to get access to that? First get it collected in one person's place and then get everyone access to it who's gonna attend.
Well, I think if we can get a copy of it, just email it to the people who are going to attend.
Things will find it to check and
You can email it to everybody too if you want to. But if you want to.
Okay.
I mean, I'd be happy to do it. But if you set a 4 meetings, you need to, whatever, get to everybody, if you wanted to, I can do it either way.
Okay, so as far as just making statements, I think you could, maybe something that we, is it okay if we make an early statement, or somebody, whoever, maybe Amy as facilitator, makes an early statement saying, this is as human rights commissioners, we're speaking on our own behalf today. And, you know, although we're listening as a commission, we're not speaking on behalf, we're not speaking in an official capacity on behalf of the commission. And then, as far as, you know, making promises about what we can and can't do, you know, a good way to address that, if somebody says, you need to take this up, might be to say, if there is, or if you have a request for the commission, the best way to do that is to either come to a commission meeting and make a public, engage in public testimony, or to submit a written request through the website. And then that way you can deal with any issue that comes up as far as a request for action. And then we can deal with it in the appropriate way, so we're not maybe stepping on our own toes a little bit and improvising as those questions come up. Does that sound fair?
Is that set up on the website to do, or is that just, you're saying that they would just contact you?
There is, well, I am the contact person on the website. It goes to the OEHR, or the Human Rights Commission email, right?
I didn't know there was a Human Rights Commission email.
Isn't there, well, it says Kyle Bussey, and then it has a different, not my email, on the website.
It's Jeff's.
It's Jeff's? Is it your email?
It's Jeff's.
Ah,
So,
Mike, there you go, you email Kyle.
That's why you get all those emails.
because it says my name and then it's not my email.
Oh, okay.
So there is a mechanism for contacting us through our website. So that would be the way to do it. Does that sound okay for everybody who's going to be there?
And we'll have cards.
And we'll have cards.
And the cards, right.
Yes. Okay, we got to move on, but does that work for everybody?
Yes.
Okay, great. And so just to be clear, Sam, Diallo, Alan, Amy, Sonji, and Abdul are going to be there.
I think Emmanuel wants to be there as well, but he's not here to say something.
Okay.
That would be 6, not uniform.
Okay, great. That was what I was worried about. So, is that 7? So that is a quorum.
First step.
You, Emmanuel, Soji, and Alan, get all of the same.
I mean, I guess my reason for raising it is because there was discussion about the panel. And if those people are on the panel, if the HRC commissioners are going to be panelists, like that raises a public meeting issue.
We're
If
still
they're
in
just
public
going,
meeting,
As long as the panel's not a quorum, then
You have to announce the public.
you can have, so you're saying that if you have a quorum of commissioners at the event, that's not the issue. If you have a quorum of commissioners on the panel, that's the issue. Because there's a public discussion.
I can't imagine that they.
I don't think they're going to have 7 of us on the
commissioners
panel.
on panel.
Oh, well, Amy's not going to be on the panel for sure. She's
There you go.
facilitating. So I think we're okay.
Okay.
All right. So thanks, everybody, for participating in that. I'm sorry I can't be there. And I think it'll be great. I've seen the video. It's very powerful. And I definitely encourage anybody who's going to watch it before the event. Welcome, David. Okay, and the last thing for upcoming events is just the OEHR Social. Just a reminder, it's January 10th at 5:30 at the Beacon Bistro. So we're not going to meet again until the week of that event, just 2 days before that event. So just make sure that's on everybody's calendar. All right, it's time for the CDC Roundtable Report.
I saw noted somewhere that we're co-chairing. We're no longer co-chairing. The sole chair S is Linda
Okay.
now.
I thought we had that established, but for the record, Linda McKimbell is the only chair of the Community Discovery Committee. Thank you, Linda.
All right.
Okay, so take it away.
So,
Oh, okay. So the report was beautiful, and there was some golden information in there that needs to be shared in a way that reaches as many people as possible. We wanted to just make sure that it got spread through multiple avenues, hence different learning styles. And the slides are what we need to know on the commission, so that we can just be on the same page about it, basically. It also may lighten up the mundaneness of an official document so that we can share it at public events like this meeting, because the report never has really been shared, and stuff in the report hasn't been shared in a public space like it was before. Also, the retreat may be an option, and it could go on the website so that people can have a clear understanding of what we do and what our goals are. And for incoming members, also we're following Donna's KISS rule. I don't know if you guys remember it, but yeah, keep it simple. Thanks, guys. See you next slide.
Yeah, but before we jump in, that's all really clear. This is gonna be about a 15-minute presentation, and so I don't think we'll have a whole lot of time to discuss afterwards. So what I would suggest is that we can bring up pressing concerns or questions and mark them, but anything else that needs to be discussed, we do it at a different time. I know that Ashley is looking at themes of core issues for committees, getting those revealed during the retreat. So we're thinking that this could contribute to core issues.
Could I have a hard copy of this presentation? I have to have that for so who can
Just print this now.
Pardon?
We can just print this now.
No, I need an electronic.
Okay.
I'll get it.
Oh, got it. I can even send it to you right now. After this.
Sure. Okay, so we basically divided the information into two categories. As the report reads, it's primarily set up for information to committees that are already established. So the two batches of text for each committee are what the roundtable participants report, and then followed up with that is information on our recommendations based on that. So for CPRC related stuff, they were reporting a continued need to address racial profiling by the GPB, concern about their school to prison pipeline, and a lack of community awareness regarding what CPRC is doing. So with that, we would love to see HRC continue to support the work of CPRC, and we're recommending that they consider including school to prison pipeline education in their training and advocacy, and to do that collaborating with organizations. And then also to consider collaborating with the communications crew to post their initiatives, goals, milestones, and positions on the website. And that's something, that last one, number 3, is something that we're repeating for every committee, actually. And so in addition to that CPRC relevant feedback, there are a lot of other issues regarding law enforcement that lie outside the purview of CPRC. So that came up for participants. So our recommendation is to form a new work group that is complementary to and distinguished from CPRC. Law enforcement monitoring and advocacy is just something that I'm throwing out there. It doesn't have to be that. And by the way, Abdul and I met to begin thinking about this on Monday. And Diallo and Emmanuel are also very interested. And so these are some of the things we're seeing that body, that committee could do. Community trainings around law enforcement and human and civil rights, to improve access to and understanding of the IPR process, for Know Your Rights around encounters with law enforcement. What are people's legal rights and options post-arrest? To assess the impact of city law enforcement policies and community concerns, again, that are outside of CPRC's work. Do advocacy with the mayor's office, law enforcement bureaus, any other law enforcement bodies, including private firms came up, and the oversight bodies. Issue focused Ideas include PPV policy and name dollars, private ticketing, private security parking enforcement, and the DOJ negotiations and agreements.
So for the Housing Rights Task Force, some of the roundtable participants reported there was a lack of understanding about structural contributors of homelessness, both among the community and among policymakers.
This one has 3 different subsections.
Oh yeah, this has 3 different subsections. There's the homeless awareness, there will be A, B, and C, homeless awareness. The second one and the last one is housing rights, but also circumstances need to be considered in a more holistic fashion to address the root causes of housing segregation, discrimination, accessibility, and affordability, gentrification, and health challenges of homelessness.
Let us know if we're going too fast.
So some of our recommendations are to convene discussions over housing and human rights issues in collaboration with Community Discovery Committee and possibly other outside organizations. Some of those discussions should include things around fair housing and homelessness. They should include these people, fair housing and homelessness advocates, members of the homeless and the non-homeless, business communities, city commissioners, and the mayor. The discussion should be designed to reveal the systemic and connected issues that contribute to homelessness and to find solutions that comprehensively address homelessness. And second, to continue communications that bring community awareness and combat the stereotypes that confound homelessness and criminality.
Now you're in D.
Yeah, now in B for assistance and advocacy around this. So the roundtable participants, they reported that there was a lack of safe outside sheltering, homelessness, and self-help remedies for homelessness are usually criminalized, and that there was a concern over the involuntary displacement of these people. So our recommendations are to continue advocating for safe outside shelter and clear and compassionate use of public space policies that will consider the hardships and the human rights of the houseless. So C for housing rights, the roundtable participants reported gaps in education around civil rights and housing laws for tenants and housing providers, and that there was gaps in enforcement and accountability efforts around those laws. Also, that there was a lack of home occupier protections for homeowners and tenants, and that there was a lack of assistance in housing for youth and people without specific issues. So our recommendations are to partner with fair housing organizations to provide workshops to renters regarding rental laws, homeowner rights around receiving loans, and for those who are under threat of foreclosure. Also to advocate for enforcement and accountability of those laws, advocate for inclusionary zoning like we have been, protection for Section 8 voucher distributions, and supportive housing and funding programs that enable people with disabilities to stay in their homes. Some additional recommendations from the Housing Rights Task Force are to consider the specific needs of people with disabilities and the homeless youth population, and to provide housing and homelessness support resources on the HRC website via collaborations with communications.
The Communications Committee recommendations were to establish a committee, and we've done this, to drive the overall communication strategy for HRC to help increase media coverage of issues, and partner with city and county to establish an online clearinghouse for events and support resources. In addition, they wanted to provide action items on social media and notifications on the OEHR website. And they reminded us to infuse international human rights laws and concepts into HRC's communications. And another recommendation was to publish a periodic HRC newsletter for the community. And we were reminded to use stories collected from the community to better illustrate all issues and to convey their human side.
HTTF, roundtable participants were looking at a lack of awareness of trafficking, particularly regarding the scope, human impacts, what constitutes a violation, and the breadth of different violations in Portland. A need for public education on how human rights intersects with labor rights, unaccompanied minors, and the challenges of what's going on with immigrant detention and mass incarceration right now. For recommendations in terms of improving awareness, increase media interest coverage, infuse international human rights concepts in our communication with them, use story again. Another thing that they reported was challenges around disseminating support information due to cultural divides and the fragmented, isolated nature, which is something that I think HTTF really knows well. Of those communities, a lack of visible, accessible public education materials, lack of organizational resources to respond efficiently, including legal representation is direly missing. In terms of supporting victims and survivors, continue mapping. The mapping project was a great hit. That's already in place. Continue soliciting cultural insights to reach victims and survivors, and continue partnering with local organizations who offer free legal clinics. Include billboards and social media forums as public outreach. Advocate for funding, particularly for legal support. Provide an accessible referral source for local support available to victims and survivors.
So a topic on youth, which speaks directly to the HRC and Nominations Committee. The roundtable participants reported that youth need more access to organizations and positions where they can influence and make institutional change, to city regulatory processes, to entrepreneurship and business, and into educational systems, which they're highly affected by. So some of our recommendations are to intentionally weave their perspective into our work and collaborate with groups like the Multnomah Youth Commission and other youth organizations and schools that are proactive in addressing these rights, like David Douglas, who does this amazing restorative justice, and Trillium, who have done mediations to combat the sewer pipeline, and also to suggest programs that route youth to community and global service. Additionally, the nominations committee should continue to include recruitment of youth in their search.
And for this, we had conversation about whether Diallo was a youth recruit or not, and what does that mean? As long as you're on, can we consider you a youth? We don't know.
You have a bigger beard.
Measure of age.
And,
That's true.
Here were the recommendations to General HRC, that we continue to improve communications with OEHR and city commissioners, that we do more policy research and reporting on that, and look for opportunities and partnerships to develop better data. Others were look for more opportunities to include education on human rights and develop a reliable rapid response procedures, which we're beginning to do if you saw this lovely flow chart. And that each work group, each committee, post initiatives, goals, and milestones and positions on the HRC website. Amy, is that correct? Was that committees and working groups?
Yeah, I threw out a new definition in there. That would mean each committee and task force, is what I mean. And anything else that isn't a task force or committee.
And here's something very important, that we address the idea of the oppression of polite culture. And that is defined as a term that is emerged during the roundtable, that communication styles often known by progressives of more privileged communities in Portland prevents a frank discussion and deeper learnings that are missing from our conversations in the public arena. concerns that, quote, we don't know how to talk to each other, end quote, especially over the uncomfortable issues, and silences about the realities of human rights concerns, all create an oppressive environment, as was brought up at the roundtable. And we address this by attending meetings hosted by other organizations and with organizational representatives. And that we have hosting environments that introduce individuals who are less likely to meet otherwise and encourage a diversity of authentic expression. And that we give special consideration to immigration rights as they overlap with other initiatives. The recommendations
Or
are,
beyond 2014, excuse me.
yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Recommendations for beyond 2014 would be to promote alternative models for justice and peacekeeping, i.e. conflict resolution trainings, restorative justice programs, and victim offender mediation. In addition, a more comprehensive labor rights advocacy scope and a more comprehensive immigrant rights advocacy scope. We recommend to promote media rights, which would include looking at the digital divide, considering the difference between let's say an open source kind of media and a centralized and predatory media. Like open source versus proprietary technology systems. So closed and open, owned and free. Call for city leadership to foster an open source media culture and a community media empowerment education program. We had a very strong media contingent at the roundtable, and they brought these things up. It was wonderful. And for the Community Discovery Committee, next steps.
Oh. I think that was me. So yeah, our next steps are to continue our roundtables and extend our invitation as broad as possible because we've got a lot from it. Also to devise forums with more in-depth discussions like this one that we're hoping to do around housing rights. To support better coordination between the organizations and the public because that was one of the big asks for us to be kind of clearinghouse in a way. And to continue to develop coalitions, which we have been. Also to improve our outreach to the indigenous support organizations and the new immigrant community, and to build a coalition with organizations fighting discrimination against people with disabilities. And last, to consider facilitating a discussion with media rights advocates toward identifying a common joint agenda.
So I've got a question for you. On the housing segment, was there any mention of any kind of Portland Housing Bureau partnership? I'm not saying it wasn't in there. If there was, I didn't see it.
At the roundtable?
In the report.
In the report, no, it's a great idea.
But I think that there was a little bit, at the very end, you were talking about trying to collaborate with other bureau, I didn't know if the bureau was one of the words, but trying to collaborate with other organizations and that would maybe fall into that.
Yeah,
But,
if
yeah.
any kind of work might be repeated, so, there might be some existing things that are in place.
Yeah.
So,
The other thing that struck me, and I've actually been thinking about this a lot lately, but the other thing that struck me in the report where there are several mentions about education. You know, we have a big education component at the HRC level. So, and I think one of the things we want to be aware of is not letting our scope creep too much, spread. But my suggestion, the thought that I've had recently would be to potentially form a committee that puts on 4 events a year that are simply education events. And so I would actually dump the bus tour into one of this. First education that we have to be bus tours around housing, know your rights, would be a type of education event, so we wouldn't necessarily put it up under CDC. We could have this education arm that all it did was ran 4 events a year that were 4 very specific topics that we wanted to bring forward from a pure education standpoint, HRC. That it's just output of information. It's not dialogue, it's not community dialogue, but it's just, here are presenters, here's information. We ran it as an HRC thing. And I saw a lot of that.
I'm glad you brought that because that was in 2009. I
Oh,
struggled with.
okay.
Yeah, that was brought up. Actually, I keep pushing as education was right tender. We brought it at that time. You remember, it was education, was secrecy, was and communication, and that's what it was talking about. How we identify education versus communication at that point. And it was basically started with how can we start educating people about their rights to human rights and immigration. I'm glad you brought up that discussion. Here is something we are doing actually at PCC. We started because sometimes when you are trying to look at the bureaucratic system, something like that, you can be running everywhere with no one. But what we did, we call it coffee conversation. What it is every Friday from 2 to 4, we have this room. We don't take people by invitation. Anybody can show up. Cookies, tea, coffee, and who comes? Anybody who is an international or immigrants. And every week there are presenters around immigration issues. Maybe we are ready for civil rights. Police actually, Pat Walsh show up to talk about the rights or around when you pull over, things like that. We can do something like that. And be happy to participate in it, to facilitate. But another thing for HTTF, I don't know if you heard about what University of Washington doing around human trafficking. Oh, here is what they created. They creating, I don't know for which department, and we need to search this, or who is paying for this, is they're creating that when you go to grocery store, this is for females, or respects, I don't mean any other agenda, we know that straightforward. So for females, you hear about it? No. For females, for boxes. Batons?
Oh, tampons.
Tampons.
I think it's packed.
Those. When you open the box, you find in every one of them, or in the box, a phone number to call if you are a victim. And every region or everyone I heard, there is a secret number and call. So people who are perpetrators, they cannot do that. So this is something we can jump on and maybe create something, or so I don't know. Or who's leading this, if we can jump on it on an important area, or if it's going to be implemented important, we better be ahead of publicizing. So I just want to share this with you. The other thing around rent, I saw around rent, right? There is actually classes running, and they are funded in our community by grants that they teach about the rights for renters. Yeah, toward the landlords, what's your rights? You know. So I just want to share with you those points.
Thank you. Ms. Malloy.
So I just, I want to say sort of echo Jeff and Alan and Abdul was saying, but there were a number of places though housing was not, well, there were other parts of, Portland Housing Bureau did not come to my mind as an issue about overlap, but I do think that when each of the committees or we as the HRC should down those different aspects, especially around education, there's the frustrating thing to me is, having worked in a nonprofit that did education, there was a lot of educating going on. We were doing a lot of that work, and yet the thing that kept coming back to us is there's a need for more education. So there are people out there, I would hazard guess on every topic we talked about, the need for more education, except maybe the knowledge of human rights issues, how they relate locally. There's going to be somebody doing that work. Now, they may have limited resources, they have limited ability to do more. So I just want to make sure, one, that we don't duplicate work that they're doing, that we know how we can fit in to augment what they're doing, if that's what we decide to do.
And that's my suggestion. My suggestion is that bus tours is a good example, is that we actually limit our scope by not trying to recreate or create education, that what we're actually doing is supplementing resources that exist in the community, rebranded as issues that we're bringing forward, just like bus tour. And we already know the folks that are doing Know Your Rights, so we bring them forward, we help provide resources and.
Right, so that's one more bus tour year
That's
that's
right.
going to be done.
That's right, exactly. So,
Without
yeah,
that,
yeah, exactly. I think we could have a very small, narrow scope that says these are the issues we want to present on, and let's go find a resource and bring them forward. So that limits we get to.
Also, it's in our strategic plan. And if there was education working group, task force, committee, I would love to be a part of it. I mean, I go to PSC, I'm around education all the time. Human rights is big, and so, yeah.
Linda, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, for part of this report, we were asked to provide some kind of a human rights clearinghouse of information on the website. And so we may not be able to directly provide all those services, but if we have a well-organized clearinghouse, it's very user-friendly for people, then they can go there for some of that information. So that fits neatly together. I'd like to say in the end, after working on this committee, that we owe a lot to the public for showing up for that and for giving us that information and suggestion. And it was very broad, it was very deep, it was very detailed. It was a big job that Amy and Diallo did to go through that, all that information and organize it in the first place into the longer report. And then it was very difficult to collapse that rich goldmine of information into this slideshow. So I really appreciate working with an excellent, knowledgeable team from beginning to end on this project. And I just hope we all appreciate what a goldmine the community has given us and how valuable that roundtable was, especially because of what happened afterwards and the way that information was collected and synthesized into this useful format.
I wish Sarah Milliron was here, or Milleron, to thank her for all of her work that she did on that, because the collation of a lot of that data was Sarah's work. She was fantastic.
So-
And
Thank you.
I think that's fantastic. That is, thank you all so much for all your work on that. I think that one way that we can show our appreciation for the community for all of that gold that they provided is to get this out into the community, or to get some form of this out into the community as soon as possible, to let them know that we're being responsive to their requests, and then to follow up on it.
So is this what we put up before you then, or?
So, yes, the roundtable report, I think the long version, we still like to go out. So
Is that
that's-
ready to go out? The long version?
I met with Amy on it, but I've been working on.
No, I'm just asking, I'm not suggesting it.
Yeah,
Is
so.
it? So it's not, okay.
On my end, they've given it to me, but I haven't been able to do it.
Okay.
Could you reformat this, because it's distilled down very nice, could this be reformatted into an executive summary? I mean, just, and all it is format-wise, I mean, the words are exactly the same.
I would rather,
Or have a different format for,
I mean, if it's okay with you all, and certainly the CDC, I think putting this content in a summary form, you know, and it's made in what you already presented to me, but to get this out widespread, but also have the full, you know, for those folks who want to drill down deep, and have that full report online. Is that what we had discussed in our meeting?
So-
Amy has presented a lot of stuff to me, and I want to make sure that no one thinks that she hasn't given me the information. So.
Yeah, what I understood that we walked away from our meeting deciding is that a full version would be available, as would be just the recommendations version of the long version. So that's essentially the guts of it, that they see the recommendations, which basically this came from. But then I would suggest we do the third piece, which is make this available as well.
Can this take the place of the recommendations since it has?
Because this has the recommendation.
Absolutely.
So I think that would be
Good
great.
idea.
I also think that you know, there are a lot of great recommendations in here, and one thing that I think it's easy to do sometimes is come up with these great ideas, and then sometimes forget that we are a volunteer organization, and then it's gonna be really hard to achieve a lot of this. But to then think how we might present this to other bureaus, commissions, committees, commissioners in this city, so that we're not only making recommendations to the HRC about what the HRC can do, but we're also making recommendations about what the city can do. A lot of this stuff is city work. It's not just HRC work. And I think it would be great to put something like what you guys just did together and present it to the city council.
So.
I think
pulling
that
out-
this is
pulling out
fantastic.
I would present this.
I thought this was gonna be a city
Yeah.
council presentation.
But it's just, the titles are to us, you know, it's HRC have.
The city, I mean, it could be
We would
the city
omit-
should be doing these
We would
things.
omit the reference to committees.
Right.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
just do it by topic.
Yep.
and it could be just by topic, but yeah, I mean, this is fantastic. And this is, the city should know that HRC is doing this stuff and that we're distilling this information into these recommendations, because this is exactly what we should be doing as an advisory body. This is a beautiful piece of advisory material. So,
I really agree with that. And my input, how can we put this, instead of waiting, how can we put it to action? How are we going to make this happen that we present this to the city council? What's the next step? Because I think this is beautiful, this is great work.
yeah.
I think housing needs out there, so
Well,
what's the next step?
I'm arranging for our annual report to city council. You know, one thing that I think that would be a reasonable request would be to ask for an additional 15 minutes and make this a part of the annual report. This is such a big piece. I don't know if that's something that we'll be able to do, but I think that would be a reasonable request at this point, given how busy they've been and how we've been unable to get into an agenda for our own annual report. So,
And we were just bumped from our.
Yours was?
We had to go to January.
so we're gonna be in January or February. So, I mean, we've got to understand, just like everybody else, we're in line. There are a lot of people that need to get in there, but that's, I think, the next step. It's making this maybe a part of our annual report. I think that would be good.
Can I make a quick suggestion?
Yeah.
There is another area of council that I think HRC can take advantage of as far as time, which is the communications part at the beginning of the session, where you can sign up, you get 3 minutes. Obviously, you can't go through the whole thing, but I think that's something that HRC should take advantage of as we move forward, to really get in front of council often, even with just a quick report on what a committee is doing or whatever. But I think it's a great way to get this group in front of council as often as we can, and that's it's an opportunity that doesn't get used very often. Is that section of their meetings?
That's a good idea, yeah. I mean, I think if we can even, maybe when we're at the strategic retreat, we could talk about maybe making that a monthly thing. Like once a month, somebody goes for 3 minutes in front of council and says, here's what we're doing. Yeah.
3 minutes each.
And I'm gonna pass.
See my time to it.
I mean, you really could, but I mean, it would be neat to just make that a monthly thing where one commissioner commits. You know, we just, maybe 2 months ahead, everybody is in a rotation, and it's like, you're committing, this is your day, you're gonna go do this for 3 minutes. And so I think that would be great. But that's awesome, you guys. Thank you so much for that. That's really great. And let's let the community know that this is their work.
Could I ask one more question about, just for logistics? So the full report that we're talking about, this digital gap, right, or this divide, the full report will be available online. The summary that is based on this will be online and print, and how will that be disseminated if it's printed? And how-
I didn't catch any printing part. I don't know that we need to print it.
Let's just make a PDF available so people can print themselves.
That's, yeah.
Oh, are we talking about the digital
Kind of
divide?
ironic that you're talking about the digital divide.
I don't know what the digital.
That's my question.
But I think your point gets to a larger issue, which is the divide between how we communicate with the communities we want to. And is even having a printed version going to be a useful way to communicate?
In English, right?
An English version printed is not necessarily going to be the way to do it. So I think the point we're taking, we need to consider how do we want to make sure this information gets to the various communities beyond just, hey, it's up on our website?
Well,
Abdul?
I think at the very least, we should send to email to the participants.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Abdul, and then we really need to move on.
Yeah, I can comment to something. If somebody can get me associations in the community of groups, like African American, Latino, etc., and when they have their association time, I can contact them for a time for me to come. And they will make sure within 1 month I will run through all of them, or within a couple of months I will run through all of them with presentations about it.
You'll go and make presentations to all of them. Awesome.
I'll go do that.
That
Because
would
it
be
has
really,
to
really
be-
great.
it has-
That is a very.
This is how we can get out there. I'll be honest
Thank
with
you.
we have to
That's
do this way.
amazing.
So if I can get those information, these associations, and to make time with them, I will do that. Another thing, I can go far and can ask some entities, public entities like DHS or housing, that I have sometime during their staff meeting to come and share some information with them. I'll be happy to do that too.
That's
So
awesome.
that's the way we are going to get to the public. Because a lot of people, some of them, they don't read well, some of them, if they don't get it, has to be presented, not to be dependent on a PDF, or some of them, they don't have computers.
That's what, yeah.
Well, that's great. That's very generous of you, Abdul.
So when you do present, we will need, great.
So, yeah.
Yeah. present.
Okay, Linda, do you need to?
Very quickly,
Okay.
I'm very proud about this report, especially because the messages from the community were not just, massaged, distilled, distorted, or watered down, as often happens.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, CDC, very much for all that hard work. That's amazing. Thank you. Okay,
So Diallo, you're gonna send this to me?
Yes.
And it's in PowerPoint or?
It's,
Google-
I'm gonna
Google
download it as a
presentation.
Word document. No? Because it's in,
It's gonna be something I need
Try
to.
PowerPoint.
I'll need to cut.
really? Oh, well, yeah, Word. Sorry.
Try PowerPoint,
That's what I
okay,
meant.
you guys will get that figured out.
PDF.
All right.
Not PDF. it's-
You're still on, you're still, you still have the floor.
I do.
We're gonna talk about HRC Retreat Planning.
Okay, right. So, in review, we ran into some trouble when we needed a new executive director chair, excuse me. And realized that we wanted to have a special meeting to figure out what can we do about that, what changes we want to look at. And then with the magic of Robert's Rules of Order, Kyle nominated me to give my hand at reorganizing things. So, let's see, there are, should we?
Flow chart first?
I don't know. No,
Okay.
not yet.
All right.
So you guys have two documents stapled together. One begins with definitions, and behind it is a roles and responsibilities chart. And then you guys have two colorful flow charts. This is not meant to overwhelm anyone, much less me. And I think these are conversation pieces. These are meant to reveal things, your opinions, what needs to be done with what I've created, because I did it on my own. But I do want to suggest that we have three goals with this task and with you guys looking at it. One, we realized in that meeting that we need more autonomy for committees to be able to act independently, including in making public statements. Second goal is we need to relieve the burden of the executive committee, chair and vice chair. And three, we need to make more evident what are commissioner goals. What are we supposed to be doing, what can we be doing, and that includes executive committee. And after going through it, I think a fourth goal is we need to make this low bureaucracy. So steps are clear. You don't have to look at a flow chart and remind yourself how does everything go every time you want to take an action. So let's just look at the definitions for a minute. And I pulled out the term work group because I felt that would support the document that I was creating, but basically, a work group is a task force or committee, and we need to define those. What is a committee and what is a task force? That's Ashley's feedback. But that's not forgotten. I'm suggesting we use the term issue work group, so we can distinguish the committees that are working on specific issues in comparison to communications, for example, which would be a support work group. This is all, again, to just support our coming to a common language so we can move forward more smoothly with any changes. So what I did is start with what would it look like if we were wanting to put together a public statement? Because that's the most tricky thing for us, right? The most delicate. So we have a definition for a request. A verbal or written petition is to ask the HRC or one of its work groups to act on an issue. So one of those requests would be a public statement. We have a requester, obviously the person making that request. And we have external and internal requests. Obviously, internal is one of us, external is somebody not us. And then an action request versus a rapid response request. The request for action does not require action before the next monthly HRC meeting, right? So basically, it's something that does not need a vote from the HRC. We can move slower because it's not pressing for time. Versus a rapid response request, for it to be effective, that action needs to be taken before the next monthly meeting. We've been struggling with this here and there, because we can't do it over email, and it's been complicated. So the term adopt, an agreement made by a work group to initiate and follow through with a response to a request. And then there would be an adopting work group, a work group that has adopted the request. And the next page is roles and responsibilities. And I just want you guys to see this as a tool. I don't think we should go into it today necessarily, but I think this will help us map who does what, and particularly as we make any changes. I'm just kind of pause for a second. Any questions at that point?
What is CPC on this, on the roles and responsibilities?
So, communications program coordinator, is that what you are? Oh. What are you?
Well, that is my title, I guess.
Oh. It could be whatever you want.
But I'm not a communications program coordinator for this law.
Okay, so how should you read?
Caterer. No, I'm the
Caterer.
I'm your staff person. OEHR staff.
I call you program coordinator, is that right?
Mr. Program coordinator is fine.
HRC program.
I just don't want the communications part of it to be, you know,
HRC program
Okay,
coordinator.
thank you, good.
Because that's what you're doing, that's what, you just coordinated the awards programs, and things like that. And these meetings or programs, things like that. So, okay, that's that.
Any other questions?
HRCPC. Right. So HRCPC.
HR,
Public stuff.
Okay.
wait, you guys.
So CPC.
HRCPC.
Yeah, it's fine. Once we gotta keep going. We're about 20 minutes behind.
Okay, so let's look at one of the flow charts. I have one flow chart for public statement by HRC as a whole, and the other flow chart is public statement just by a work group. So basically what I'm going into with is the idea that any action has to be adopted by a committee or task force. And that committee or task force, of course, could be executive committee.
social media. When you see any action.
Any response to a request or any action. So anything that we want to do that's public.
So,
With that response to a specific request.
okay, does it include here, if, for example, something happened today, and we wanted somebody to go act on it, is this part of it? So how can we get a committee to agree on something happening today that it's urgent for somebody to go and represent us?
Right.
I think we might, yeah, I think we might change the word request to action. I think that actually might make it more clear. Because I think Abdul's right, if something happens in the community, we're not necessarily waiting for a request or action on it. But if we need to take an action, then we have to decide who should get assigned to it. If it's a rapid response, it needs to go to exec committee and maybe make a decision.
Right.
So something, the press release,
So
EPP press release.
I guess what I'm hearing is we've got requests, to make it simpler, we've got requests, those come from the outside, and then when it's coming from the inside, it just moves into action.
Well, I think some of these requests becomes an action.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. All of them are actions, anything that comes before the HRC is an actionable item. And so whether it's made by request or made by circumstances, then we have to decide where that action goes, who's going to adopt that action.
Right.
And if it's a request, then we know if it's,
Well, I don't know that she needs to change the terminology of request, but just maybe go back to the external and internal definitions you've got, because those are.
I mean, basically, within a committee, somebody comes up with an idea that says, I think we should do this. And so I'm thinking of that as a request. And it goes in really smoothly to committee's work because that person is available already to their committee. So, I mean, this front part might be more than we need.
Yeah, a lot of times is, so I don't really take time, but this is really crucial. Because sometimes when people say, I speak one language, as in English in US, I said, no, that's not true. There is two types of speaker of languages. There is a language of people who are in poverty and indicated that it is a common, and there is a language of English of educated people. We serve people who are a lot underserved or underrepresented for this community. So the people who need really clear language. So for me, if I get something like this or a comment and me struggling trying to put a definition to it, means we have to address it probably. Those people will be asking this question.
And my understanding, I think, was that these are intended, you're introducing us to these concepts today, and then we're going to go over hashing this stuff out at the retreat, right? So these are, you're giving us this so that we can try to absorb this and come up with our ideas for the retreat, right?
I would prefer, personally, that we hash it out over, those who care about this particularly, hash it out with me over next month.
Oh.
Before the retreat.
And like a phone call or something like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Put it on
because
comment.
then we'll use up so much of the retreat time if we don't have it in time. Okay, so that's something to work on. My action and request language is not really clear. That's good.
No, I'm sorry, it's really clear, just like what's how we, the language we use.
Okay. Okay.
For me, it's very low.
Sure. So it helped me think about this by thinking of what is the end product that we want, right? So for flowchart 1, what we want is a public statement by HRC. How do we get there? So if an action comes from an external party, it's going to come through this meeting or another public meeting or a request form. And I've laid out some suggestions about what we do when that happens. And let's not get into detail about that yet. But then at that point, that request can go to a work group who adopts it as an action request or a rapid response. Or it can go to executive committee. If it goes to the work group, we need that chair of the work group to agree on a statement. Because it's a statement by the whole HRC, right? If that is something that is adopted by the executive committee, that automatically goes to the next step. If it's a rapid response, the chair sends it to all the commissioners with a topic outline, time frame so they can ask to provide input. If it's a simple action request, executive committee gets it ready to prepare for a meeting. Right? Step 5, if it's a rapid response, if they jump to 6. If it's a rapid response or just an action request, and we have a vote of yes, the executive committee sends a statement to CPC, and then it goes. Okay. If we're just doing an action request, do we need a vote? And then with a vote of no, the executive committee will reinstate it with any changes. So basically, this gives it makes it, I'm hoping this makes things move smoothly, or move fluidly through. It gives particularly less burden to the executive committee, because a work group can adopt something and work with them, perhaps write out a statement entirety, and the executive committee just needs to sign off on it. And this also gives rapid responsibility. So, and the committee that adopts gets to decide, is this a rapid response? Can I actually act on this in the time frame that I need with this process or not? So how's that laying out right now?
I could use some time to look at it, probably. And I just don't, yeah. Just for me personally, I'm having a little, I'm not going through it rapidly. And so I think that if I had a little more time to look at it, I would be able to streamline it in my own mind a little bit better. And so I would propose that we take this home and look at it, and then as we're able to participate in the preparation prior to the retreat, that we really talk about this at the retreat, because I think this is really, when we talked about having that retreat, I think this is really one of the primary things we were all talking about, is this is the kind of thing that will ease the burden on the executive committee, increase the independence of the chairs. And so I think we can spend a substantial part of our time at the retreat on getting this to a point where everybody really understands it. So does that sound okay? I mean, and I'm also, being chair and trying to make sure we move on to our next items.
And I think we should be careful about which pieces I think there are some very key sort of linchpins or points in here that we really, for me, a lot of charges, but really so for instance, one of the things you said, as an example, is the adopting chair gets to decide if this is a rapid response or not. So I actually think that might have to happen earlier, that maybe the exec committee says, this is rapid response, HRTF does it. So those are the kinds of decisions I think we need to be making, as opposed to where some of these boxes go.
So the expectation is that the commissioners will take this back, absorb it, review it, and get feedback to Amy before the retreat, right?
My thought was that those, like I said, those who really care about this will work with me before the retreat, and we'll get as clean a version that we can before then, so we're not wrestling with it too much during the retreat.
Is this could be the whole retreat.
It could, yeah.
And, yeah,
I
we
think
don't want that.
we should try to distill it down as much as we can before the retreat. And those of us who, and I'm talking to myself here also, those of us who say that we are interested in helping out with this and helping Amy with this, let's commit to respecting Amy and actually doing that, because she's obviously put a lot of work into this. So I will commit to putting some time into it to try to give you my feedback. And for anybody else who says that they're going to, let's do that, because this is a lot of work, and this could be really, really important for next year HRC and into the future. So
Can we get a deadline for when we can get feedback back to you? Just to put a date on it?
maybe like by the next HRC meeting, what do you think?
Yeah. What do you think, Amy? It's
That's
just
23
really,
days before the.
No,
No, I thought that it would be during this next month, so.
right.
Oh, I mean, like have it all kind of.
Oh, have it all kind of by our next meeting,
the
January.
feedback should get to Amy
Exactly,
By-
in a week,
in a week.
possible.
Okay.
So December 11th,
How many, what?
December 11th.
December 11th, and then who other than Kyle is interested in navigating this? I think Ashley is, but I don't know what the time frame is.
I'm like, I really need time.
Yeah.
I'll put out an email, tomorrow, to let everyone know what the expectation is, that you get feedback back to Amy. And,
Even a single suggestion. or
yeah,
something
and there may
like
be
that
some
from
folks
everybody.
that look at this and go, yeah, okay, now I have some,
Yeah.
but it may take some time to get there.
Yeah.
There's one thing I want to point out briefly on the second chart, which is important, and that's the notion of vetting, that in order to let committees be able to speak, make public statements and other actions independently, there was a request that those chairs be vetted. And I have a definition of what that, a definition and a process for what that might look like on the definition page.
Okay.
How do we make the vetting happen? That's it.
Okay,
Thank
thank you,
you.
Amy, thank you for all that work. That's a lot of work. I wouldn't have any idea how to do that. Okay, Alan, will you guide us through the budget
So-
in 5 minutes?
I'll go through this very quickly, because what this that you have in front of you in a very small fashion, again, because it's numbers, it represents, on the left-hand side of this now, this is just this fiscal year budget from July 1st of this year to June 30th of 2014, so we're about halfway through the fiscal year right now. The left side of this represents what we had originally adopted as a budget. The right side of it now is just a reallocation of some of those same numbers. And the boxes that are gray are the areas that have had numbers reallocated. So for instance, if you take the very top line that says Community Discovery Public Forums, we originally had thought that we might bring forward more forums that are actually going to occur, so that budget has gone down from 4,000 to 3,000. But if you go down to, towards the bottom, HTTF, for instance, you see that their number has gone from 900 to 2,000, because they've made a request for another project, based on the fact that we can reallocate some of those numbers. So the total budget doesn't change for the HRC, it's just where we are anticipating spending those dollars. So you can get an idea, if you look at the very bottom row, you can see that the general HRC budget went from 10.5 to 13.7, and CDC went from 7,100 down to 4,000. The other thing that's come out of CDC, for instance, are the community partnership events. So originally we thought those might live there, but I think the only thing that CDC will be working on are the forums and the roundtable. So those other two 500s probably need to come back to the general HRC column. The communications column actually came from information that Sonji provided on initiatives that she wants to bring forward. Some of them are printing brochures. She's talked about T-shirts and advertising and business cards, so those are we just try to allocate budget there for them. And she'll be working with Jeff on how those may or may not be able to happen.
The whole budget will be business cards. Seriously?
Yeah. And she's got some other ideas there.
Okay. Oh, there's other printing as well, okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
So the one area I would point out though is, again, if we look where we talked about education again earlier, there's some big chunks of money in there for education events. The one again that I'm proposing is that we sponsor bus tours again. I've talked to Donna about that. Working with race stocks to do that. It's a big ticket item, it's $1,500 a bus. But there's still also another like $2,800 chunk there for an education. So if it's something that we are interested in doing, there is budget there, we need people to have initiatives to help us bring forward in the spring. That's kind of the long and short of what's there.
Thank you.
And Kyle can describe this part if he wants.
Why did we lose $1,500?
Did we? No.
Total 30,000 versus 28,500.
Oh, mine says 30.
Mine says 28.5.
Mine says 28.5.
What's ours? We should not have. Let's look which was.
The bus row.
Is it this? Because I saw that this didn't get transferred.
You're right. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Yep, it didn't get to the total. That's right. So it's 30, I'm sorry, on the second version, the one that got printed out, I did not split CDC's public forums and roundtables. So the copy you have, there's a line item for public forums and a line item for roundtable. So I just, it originally was 3,000. I wanted to split it to use the verbiage of CDC
So there's an additional 1,500 here,
Yeah.
in the bottom line.
right? So here it should say 1,500.
It should say
and that
1,500,
should
and
be-
that,
that
it
means
didn't get carried over to
30,000.
the right. It got carried to the bottom.
The total CDC is 30.
It's 3
Right,
for the,
For that.
one public forum and one
right.
roundtable.
But then you've also got
Yeah, I don't-
community partnerships.
Yeah, like I said, I don't,
We don't do that.
that's right, I don't think I think those need to move out of there.
Well, they can, but that's in there now. We can move them.
We just moved to general, yeah, so I think that CDC is not essentially responsible for those
So move that into general.
in the general, or maybe do communications.
Do we have any other expenditures before the next meeting we have in January that would need to be a part of this new adopted budget? I don't think we do.
Well, expenditures, we don't know, but this is budget, not expenses.
Right.
So this is how we're budgeting, and, I mean, you mean committed expenses? Not that I know of. Not that I know of, not that anybody's told me.
Are we paying for facilitating this for the retreat?
No, not that, I don't think so.
We have, I mean, we have.
Right, we did for the,
I think we need somebody to help us with that. It's not gonna be.
Do you mean somebody outside of HRC who's not a commissioner, you mean?
It would be nice if we did, I don't know if we want to pay for it, if not, then it would have to be a commissioner who would commit to facilitating it and participating, but we did need somebody from the room.
I think Ashley has volunteered to be like the chair of the retreat.
She's coordinating. She's,
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of thinking of that as.
My point is
that
that
role.
we need a facilitator more that, in the past, we have paid for facilitators, not really a community expense.
Right,
in
before
January.
January. Yeah, in January. I hadn't talked about that with anybody, so I assumed we were not going to have that, but I'm not saying that's a decision.
There's very little room built, there's very little that we build in here anymore for things like professional services. Most of these are event-based expenses that we're spending, so we're not spending any more on things like that.
I mean, it could be that we split up among us the facilitation per session.
I think somebody just has to be.
Resolve.
I think there's enough talent on the commission to be able to split up those responsibilities, given the amount of time we have to plan
Right. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
finding a
and
facilitator
expense.
Yeah.
for that
Getting
specific
them up to
day,
speed with
less
what
than a
we're
month away.
Yep. Yeah.
So,
Sorry, I was going back to the budget question.
go ahead.
When did we start talking about the 14-15 budget?
Right now. So the way I would talk about it, if it was me, is that I don't see or I haven't heard that there would be significant changes to our budget from what we're planning this year over next. I don't think that we have too many events that we wouldn't want to repeat in the next year.
And I think that's good for us as a commission, frankly, to have certain events that we are associated with. I think the Emily Gottfried Human Rights Awards is a big event that we should be associated with every year. I think the CDC Roundtable is a big event we should be associated with. I think the bus tours is a great opportunity to continue to
Legal
support
workshops.
that. Legal workshop, yeah, so.
Yeah, and then the other big piece that comes out of here is the CPRC's work with the training project. And that's we've got another year in it, so.
So I like having those, I like the idea of being associated with those events, especially now we're really starting to establish those things after this year of a lot of planning. Um,
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it seems like this is sort of what you would propose to the OEHR, because we have to propose this to Dante. And then it would look a lot, I would think it would look a lot like this, right?
That's kind of what I've heard and felt, you know, from committees. You know, again, we certainly could expand the scope of what we're trying to do if money wasn't going to be as scarce as it was this year. But yeah, I wouldn't expect that there are fewer things that we would do unless we were forced to by budgetary constraints.
The only
Do you agree
thing,
with that when you've heard the same from the commission?
On our commission or on the council?
Our commission.
No, I haven't heard anything, but I don't know, I mean, I myself haven't really, until today, gotten into the mindset of like, oh, budgeting, what will be on my wish list?
Right.
I have a hard enough time coming up with the Christmas list.
the only thing I would put on the table,
Yeah.
because if we're going to independency and chairs doing a lot of work, it's all things like, it's staffing. We have to put on the table, we need more staffing. Because it's kind of, we're all full-time employees, more than full-time, some of us. Jeff cannot do the whole, you would know that you are not capable, but it's not enough time. And if we need a staffing, how that person should look like, or do for us.
That's not part of this. They're looking.
To
That's actually not part of this, not part of what we allocated these numbers. So that's a different piece of advocacy, but yeah.
But around,
Without
when
question.
we're going to retreats with all these creative ideas, is that the reality we have to face, what the reality we have.
But yeah, I think what Alan's saying though is that there are two different budgets really, and this is not that budget. Like this doesn't pay for, this doesn't include Jeff's salary. There's a whole HRC internal, administrative budget that we don't see, that isn't a part of this. This is all expenditures.
No,
We
what
should be thinking
what I'm
about
trying
what
to say
we
is,
want.
we're talking about budget. For me, I'm not touching this one, actually. This cannot do anything for us as much about stuff. But okay, as we're working on this is the time for budget and requests for the city and the office here, what we need. As well as what's going parallel with that is the retreat, what we are hoping to achieve, and what we got last time, the big obstacle of support. We have to be all going at the same time. Otherwise, we cannot do it as we keep dreaming or hoping. Yeah, Carol, I understand that to the.
Right. I'm just trying to, for purposes of this discussion, keep us on track with this budget, which we're trying to approve now. So that's what I'm gonna ask for now, is to approve the budget that Alan has presented to
I
us.
move to approve the budget now and present.
And as amended, according to the amendments that we made, which includes moving the $1,000 out of the CDC Community Partnership Events column and into the general budget, and making sure that the total amount of our budget is $30,000, which is reflected in Alan's copy of the budget that we have. So,
I accept those amendments.
second?
Second?
Okay, all in favor of approving the budget as presented by Alan, show of hands and aye. Aye. Opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the amended budget has been approved. Thank you very much, Alan, for all
I'll get a
the
final
work.
copy of the CDC. Or no, I'm sorry, putting that in the other moving the budget. Oh, yeah, he did.
Okay, folks, as you know, this is my last meeting as chair, and we are now in the nominations period for the next chair of the Human Rights Commission, and that will begin today and will continue through the next meeting, until the point of the next meeting when we actually vote on the chair. So now is the time to start nominations. They can take place, as I said, anytime between now and then. So anybody who wants to nominate a chair, go ahead and let me or Linda or Jeff know between now and that time. and we'll make sure that there's a list compiled of chair nominees, and that those people are made aware that they've become nominees, so that they can make their own decision about that. I will nominate Sunji Young as chair. And if anybody else has any nominations now, go ahead and let Jeff know, and then we will move on.
Any other nominations?
I'd like to nominate Abdul.
No.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay, so do we have any other nominations today? As we know, this nomination period will stay open. Okay. Thank you very much. And we'll let Sunji and Abdul know. Abdul, you've been nominated as chair. I was actually going to nominate you as chair earlier, when you said you would give all of the trainings to every person. Well, you're going to be busy enough anyway, buddy. You might as well just be chair.
They didn't ask for full-time staff before that.
Yeah, exactly.
So, that's why.
So there you go. All right. Well, thanks, everybody. So Sunji couldn't be with us today. We're going to move on to the committee task force and liaison updates.
We moved the OEHR update down to after nominations.
Dante's not here.
Right, but, so there's, I just want to give a quick OEHR update. There's news release.
Sorry.
the press
Oh,
release.
I'm sorry. You're right. Yeah. Thank you for doing that.
As I was sitting there.
Oh, okay. So the press release, I thought we handed out, was it?
It was. It's right here.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So that went out today, pretty self-explanatory. If you have any questions about that, I can answer them. Otherwise, real hot topics right now in OEHR, and we can move on unless you have any questions.
Is OEHR being asked to submit a budget to the city? Is that this month? Do you know? Okay.
I'm on BAC, and we met in November, and they said that board budget stuff is forthcoming, so yeah, this is December, so yeah, I think Dante is essentially working on it right now to bring the BAC by January. And we haven't heard anything from Dante about budget for HRC yet.
So, yeah, so we'll just interface with him on that, and so if you need something, I would imagine that we'll submit something similar to what we just approved.
Although, so is that the opportunity to, yes, talk about additional staffing?
I think it would be the opportunity to do that. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. And it's the entire budget for OEHR at that point.
I have a question about that.
Sure.
So what is Dante's expectation from this? It's usually, it's also kind of chief is.
Right, so we're waiting to see what will happen after Chief Reese speaks to his leadership team tonight.
So what, when it says this is a conversation that needs to happen, so is that a conversation with the community or just between the HRC?
It's a conversation within the police bureau that needs to happen about professionalism and just reinforcing that. Not that they don't have professionalism, but to reinforce the importance of professionalism.
I think this, to me, I think this is an issue that, it's not just an issue for the police to deal with. Like, in some way, I think there has to be more communication or dialogue or something with the community. Because so often, the police say, we're gonna deal with this, and we got this, don't worry about it.
Right, and that's what, exactly. And so-
And so, with this, I worked in law enforcement for a long time, and I never heard someone I worked with use this word for whatever reason.
So when I was interviewed by the Mercury today, after we put the release out, they, we're saying that we are waiting to see what is the outcome of the meeting with Chief Reese. We are not just letting it go. We're, it's a continuing relationship that we have with them, and a continuing dialogue about things like this. And the community does need to have a response, not just about this, but about a lot of different things that have been going on. And so I know Dante has been speaking with Chief Reese about some sort of continuing community dialogue about issues like this and others.
Is this the type of thing, when we're talking about another arm of police accountability from the HRC, is this the kind of thing that you're thinking of, or are you thinking more of use of force?
This is
part of it.
HRC.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that is HRC, not CPRC.
That's what you're thinking, okay. And that's kind of what I'm wondering, you know, and I think this is a good opportunity to highlight the kinds of things that we're trying to accomplish at this retreat that will empower that committee to react to these kind of reports as well. So that
There's also an
the
opportunity-
Human Rights Commission can be seen as aware and engaged on these issues as well.
There's also an opportunity to let folks know, if they didn't know, that there has been training going on with, that certainly, David has been kind of spearheading through CPRC Training Subcommittee. So it's an opportunity to say that there are some things happening, around these types of issues.
And that's where I would see it coming into CPRC is exactly, I don't know if CPRC would make a statement, but we'd certainly use it as an example. We talk about racial profiling and the fact that racially based incidents happen in the Bureau, and that's why things need to happen again, in a different way than it might in other aspects.
So it serves a lot of different purposes. One, to certainly, give the office's response, because people are looking at us all the time when things like this happen. Also to educate the people about what CPRC is doing, and also educate the people that this episode happened.
Right.
So.
Something perhaps incidental, I'm just curious if there was a reason why the HRC, that the training subcommittee is part of HRC. Is there a reason that it didn't include that, or just
Wordiness,
wasn't discussed?
Some structure, immediacy of getting it out, but you'll notice that in the email, that you got a copy of the email that went to the media, the link to CPRC, when you click on that phrase, it does go to the CPRC section of the website, which clearly says it's part of the Human Rights Commission, clearly operates independently and the Office of Equity and Human Rights.
So you didn't want to use the full title of the project, and then CPRC.
If I use the entire
of HRC?
If I use the entire committee name, the subcommittee name, that would be a release on its own.
So just clarification for me here. So here there is an officer who said the word. Then here comes and say when Dante or OEHR office trying to address this issue, the leadership, one of the members of leadership said people will argue that it is a double standard because some black people use the word.
Right.
And they know all leadership just went through, this is true, that all they went through the trainings. And here, instead of holding somebody accountable, here it's like justification, it's okay.
No, it's not saying it's okay.
It's leadership. If leadership make an account like this to me,
No, leadership didn't say.
That's
it.
Dante.
That's Dante saying people who argue.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
People who argue.
okay, so Dante who said people will argue that it's a double standard because some black people.
Right.
But then at the end says Chief Reese respond positively of James' note that he will be discussing this matter with the leadership staff immediately. So
We're assuming that Chief Reese's comment, which came actually immediately after Dante brought it up to him, is that he is going to corral his leadership team and discuss what the strategy is for dealing with this issue. Hopefully not specifically just the issue, but the issue at large.
So there isn't one leadership member that's trying to advocate for the officer saying no. Okay.
Oh, no.
Okay,
No, this
okay.
is Dante quoting that some people will, it's the argument you hear all the time.
That this issue is just a tip on the iceberg of issues that this body is going to be addressing, and that's what we're going to be going to on the 12th with this safe and sound thing. And so this is just this is just on the top of what's really happening. And so
Just one last thing, I hate to say this, is this just one of those little polite things we were talking about earlier?
Well, the point about this, it wasn't to be overly polite or anything, but also it wasn't meant to be accusatory to, so people can isolated as one specific officer and go after that person. It was meant to really say, look, this is a matter of professionalism, this is a matter of, you know, what the term,
Right.
you know, but it really was, it wasn't meant to sit there and point fingers at Portland Police Bureau and wag our finger at one specific officer and be accusatory. It was to say, this is a problem, this is, they need to reinforce the professionalism, you know, it wasn't, there's a way you do these things that, by saying it's just a polite way to
Well,
do
and
it,
that's
it's
what-
not what the intent was.
Right, and that's what I'm saying, is that there's a way to do, that we do these things, or we have historically done these things, and I think that, from my perspective, is, you know, maybe we need to specifically point at one person and say, this, you know, there's a lot of historical context that goes into what was said in this community, and I think sometimes when these issues happen, not just the HRC or this office, but this community tries to just be, you know, this is a terrible thing. You know, we've done a link to recognize the efforts that the PPB is making, but, you know, I'm just thinking out loud, is it necessary to always be so polite? And, I mean, we're talking about having real conversations. These conversations are gonna be awkward, and they're not always gonna be polite, and we should say, if I was working with this guy, I'd say, you know what, you're an idiot, and something needs to happen, that's unacceptable. And so, I don't want to get, you know, on a pedestal or anything, but I question sometimes.
I'll put it this way, if we were trying to be polite, we probably wouldn't have put the word in there.
And you're actually speaking to what like restorative justice is. We can't arrest the cops for doing this.
No, I
We can't-
understand that.
We can't do that. But what restorative justice does is to talk about these issues, and if somebody commits a crime that, or does something wrong, that the community or that person has to talk about what they're doing to a group of people, and it makes it so that that person has to be kept accountable. And so, and they also get some education from anybody else who's in that group that's listening. And so that's exactly what that is they're talking about. And so I think that it is a good solution.
So the thing would be like, I applaud Dante for taking talking about this, but where are we, CPRC and the Human Rights Commission on this? So that's the question.
Well, that's a good question. I think that if you're asking the CPRC, then I guess that's a question for the CPRC.
Get on the flow chart. I think we are in charge, and us, four of us represents us in the CPRC. And this is more than CPRC, this is HRC. That's what I said at the time. So if this is happening, and I'm not going to be responding if it is an assumption, but if it is a fact,
Oh, it's on video.
I'm trying to be. So what are we doing about this?
Well, what do you want to do about it?
I think we need to address it and challenge it as well.
Okay.
And we're not going to be maybe more polite than something like this. Dante is the head of Bill with another bill. We are a Human Rights Commission.
That's the advantage you have.
So, yes.
So that's fantastic. That's great. And so this is an opportunity for action. This would be a flow chart. And so if that is something that somebody wants to take the lead on to prepare some kind of a statement, I think that you would want to work with the communications committee and somebody to prepare something like that. We would work with Jeff, and
The executive committee would adopt it.
then we would have to approve it through the executive committee
That's where we stand now.
as it stands right now.
So there's three of us interested.
Yeah.
There is Amy, and I just need you.
And I wonder, so do you want the commission to do it, or do you think that it would be a good idea for us, this new, not recognized group that's kind of forming, to do something and then give it to the commission and Sanji, and
What I-
probably do it fast?
Sorry, I've noticed that since I've been along, we've done this formal process of initiating committees, and I don't know that we have time to do that for this committee. So it might be just quicker to run it through.
I don't think we need a committee, I think.
Yeah.
The people who want to work on drafting a statement can draft a statement, send it to the executive committee. That's the committee that will decide whether or not it goes out as a statement on the HRC. If they say yes, it goes out. If they say no, start over.
I think Amy's talking about the committee they're trying to form.
Right, and I think
Which
that's
would be
what-
called.
Well, I'm just
Public
saying, I don't
safety.
think that forming
So-
a committee is a prerequisite.
So whoever's interested in getting that statement together, just get it to me. I think the sooner
I
the
think
better.
Kyle should.
And I'll sign it on behalf of the Human Rights Commission if I and the executive committee think that it's an appropriate statement.
If someone wants to appear before city council, 3 minutes before the.
Yeah, that would be a great
That would be a
opportunity to do that.
timely way to get your message out. So there'll be media there, city
So
council.
the coming one next week or?
Anyone that doesn't have that 3-minute communications period. So
Let
let's,
me know if you want to sign up.
You gotta sign up pretty far ahead, like we
Yeah, I
did.
think.
Well, let me know.
Yeah.
just give me a statement.
Just let me know. I can go and take it with me and read the statement.
Okay. Well, let's just get one approved and then we can do it. Okay, great. I want to make sure we get public comment before 6:30. So I'm going to move public comment up if we have any. Levon is here and she has very meaningful and wonderful public comment for us. And I want to make sure we give her the opportunity to do that. Do we have any other public comment?
Charles Johnson.
Okay.
She can go
Who's
first, she's the expert, she can say be a role model for me.
Okay, Levon, why don't you come on up?
Okay.
Thanks for being here, welcome.
And sorry for being late and sorry for not being there on Tuesday.
Oh, that's okay.
But I'm glad that you guys had a wonderful event. I heard about it already.
Thank you.
So, today I come to you, you already know about January 10th, so I'm not gonna go over that again, but January 10th, we will be doing an event for all of HRC programs, and it is by invitation only, so we would like your group to think about who you would like to invite, who are your community partners that you'd really like to have there.
Are you working with Sonji on that?
I am.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
And so she's gonna know how many people we can invite? Is that?
We don't really have a number, so it's kind of like, I need to talk, there hasn't been an OEHR staff meeting recently, so we kind of haven't gone over that. But I found that usually not everybody shows up, so you're usually pretty okay. But I'll hopefully be getting more information. But the Portland Commission on Disability will be, and I'll just use the abbreviated name so you guys get familiar with it, PCOD. PCOD will be having a gathering, potluck, networking event after our full commission meeting on December 13th. Unfortunately, we meant to get a thing printed off for you, but we didn't, so I'll have Patrick give it to Jeff, and Jeff can get it out to you all. And it's just a potluck networking hangout, 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock on the 13th, here in this room. And I hope to see some of you all there. And then I'm being totally, this one's not PCOD, this is very just me. I have been working on arranging a holiday gift fair for people with disabilities who are entrepreneurs. So it's not about, oh, those poor handicapped people. It's actually about giving entrepreneurs a chance to learn from each other and work together, creative types. And that will be on December 14th. Yeah, December 14th. And anyone who's interested, just go on Facebook and look for Great Gifts Holiday Fair under LC Heister Designs or Levon's art page. Basically, find me and I'll get you the information if you're interested in knowing more about it. It's at Tabor Space from 11:30 to 2:30.
Thank you very much.
Nominating committee,
Are we opening up a period of nominations?
Yes, so
Okay.
we're going to get Jeff.
I just want to tell Levon, I just wanted to let you know that we're in a period of recruitment for HRC commissioners, and if you have an opportunity to share that with the PCOD That would be great.
On the
We
13th.
just want to know that, or we want everybody to know that we are in a
No,
period
that's
of
great.
recruitment.
On the 13th, I'll make sure I make an announcement about that.
Okay, thank you very much.
It's gonna close on the 16th.
It's the,
So we'll give some-
I'll make sure that it also goes into I think we're gonna have a disability news coming out sometime very soon.
Perfect.
So I'll try and get it into both.
That would be great. Thank you so much. Okay, we have, I'm sorry, I missed the last.
Charles Johnson.
Mr. Johnson, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Welcome.
It's a pleasure to be back. People from Sisters of the Road and Homeless Bill Rights say hello. And invite you to stop by the Red and Black at 7 o'clock. There'll be a free vegan food and informational session about the homeless bill rights.
Thank you.
So, one thing I'd like to encourage you to think about along that awesome flowchart process plan is, for example, the PowerPoint presentation is for y'all to find a mechanism and a level of comfort for electronic communication and posting outside of dealing with the information technology people of the city, so that you have comfortability. So like maybe that PowerPoint presentation could have been on an HRC Facebook page, so that people could have actually previewed it before they came here and engaged pretty close to real time. So that if we see it now, we get an electronic copy tomorrow, you don't meet for a month, it's kind of stale. So just generally for your process, that's something to think about, is rapid electronic engagement, social media or whatever. I know you're supported through the OEHR city site, but for you to have autonomy from that, I think would be a good thing. And then this latest issue with potty mouth police or something like that. Engaging with the city council through the regular communication slot is difficult because, as somebody mentioned, there's a unreasonable lag time. And I hope you all will feel empowered that the charges you've received to do this job, it's much more effective for you to go play politically nice tomorrow morning and next Thursday morning with the county commission, which has a much more open structure for public comment. Any of you in your individual or special capacity can go every Thursday morning, and there's never a delay for sign-up. And I think either tomorrow or next week, that's definitely worth considering, because people in minority communities that feel oppressed or underserved really need to hear support right away. So, one candidate would be awesome if he's not busy at 9:30 tomorrow morning. You come and talk to Loretta Smith and Miss Madrigal and others about how they partner with the city. Because even though it's one particular person's incident, we all know that it's indicative of problems between communities that might be considered less advantaged and might even consider themselves over-policed or mis-policed. The one complication in what I talked about the idea of having rapid deployment of information electronically is a comfort level for multilingualism and even alternate media. I know maybe that's something that you probably feel is a challenge for your work, is to deal with sight disabled people. At least it's pretty easy for them to get stuff via screen reader, but the IPR and different city branches have worked very hard at outreach, face some budgetary challenges by going into Vietnamese and Cyrillic alphabet stuff, and make that something that should be in the budget to make sure there's a specific allocation to cover multilingual support and translation, and more outreach. I think one thing that is pervasive throughout the city and sort of an underlearned lesson in America, it came up when you mentioned the bus touring, is we really haven't learned enough from the bookmobile model of good libraries, and that actually kind of faded out. And the simple truth is that there are underserved communities, there interestingly crappy roads, even before you get to 82nd in the city. And so not only looking at taking your own good work on the road, but how you can encourage other city departments to be more engaged. Is there an innate poverty bias in the fact that there aren't alternate service locations where people who have to deal with the water bureau essentially have to come downtown, and is that discriminatory in a way? And the other thing, as you're looking towards recruitment, and we talked about this latest high-profile issue, is just to, I'm sure, maintain the dialogue you already have about how your mission plays out and how much freedom you have to, how you balance your role as, I don't know, I don't remember if I haven't researched your official mission statement and charges, but I think you should always look for the city council to support you in making mistakes where you err in the side of going into advocacy for oppressed and underrepresented populations. If the police department, especially if white male police officers, feel persecuted or short-shrifted by the Human Rights Commission, then you're doing your job. There's no way to do your job with keeping privileged people comfortable. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for being here. Okay, Malloy, would you tell us about the nominating process?
So the nominating committee met right before this meeting. We will get Jeff a revised announcement with the right dates and everything. We hope that can go out tomorrow. We've allotted 11 days for the applications to come in, so they'll be due December 16th. And then we plan to meet December 17th, probably via Skype, to discuss the applications and hopefully do interviews, hopefully that same week, but we've got up until the next HRC meeting. So our hope is, our plan is to have a nominee for the full HRC on January 8th, who can then be voted on by the HRC, and then, assuming that's successful, I would say there's no reason they can't come to the retreat as a pending member.
That's great. We'll sneak them in right
That's right.
under the wire.
Right.
Okay.
So that's our plan. We talked about specific recruitment. We want to make sure that we either individually or through our official formal contacts that Jeff, I assume you have somewhere, but that we reach out.
Sorry, I haven't heard. I'm sorry, I gotta do a parking.
Yeah, that's all right. So I'm gonna send you the announcement.
Okay.
And I don't know what contact list you have for us to disseminate that. We want to make sure either as individuals or through official contact we have as an HRC, that we reach out to the LGBT community, that we reach out to the community of people with disabilities, specifically people with mental disabilities or their advocates. We had specific feedback that that community is not being represented by us. What else to say? Oh, and then reaching out to advocates or people who work in the domestic violence survivor community. So those were at least some of the areas that I thought we discussed having, trying to target recruitment. And always we want to target recruitment to people of color, communities of color. And in terms of skills, with Sonji taking over communications, I don't know that necessarily is a skill requirement, any more skill set requirement for us, but I assume it couldn't hurt if we do bring on another person who's adept at communication.
If she were to become chair, I should give a call.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, and also I would encourage, and you all will, I'm sure, that encourage HRC to spread the word as well once the
What's he asked me to send out? We'll send
Yeah,
out.
I mean, we can't just rely on what Jeff is gonna do,
Right.
so we need each of you to send it out to as many. And if you have specific people you think would make good, good commissioners, do not hesitate to call them and encourage them to apply. It's great.
We've also talked about the need for more policy relevant, not relevant, policy savvy folks. Actually, now trying to help.
Great. Okay, we're out of time, we're running over already. Are there, I think I can waive time as HDTF, we're working on pretty much the same thing we were working on last time. It was
CPRC.
long-term, But CPRC.
Had a great meeting at NAN. I don't want to speak on behalf of CPRC, but it was, Damon, do you want to add anything about the meeting?
Yeah, we're doing quarterly outreach. The last one was at May, and the one before that was in,
Regular school in the college.
yeah, so different communities, 4 times a year. And the second round of trainings happened in the beginning of November. Actually, that's where I was at the last HRC meeting, for sergeants. So we've gone through command staff and sergeants. Next year is detectives and officers.
I had a question about HCTF. Did you guys get contact information from people from PSC just recently?
What kind of content, what do you mean content?
So people that were doing trafficking forums at PSC's campus, I don't really get contact.
They haven't gotten in touch with us. I've talked to PSU people before, but not anybody recently.
One word about CPRC, Kofi Nitsu is the staff person for CPRC, so for the.
Great. I wanted to mention quickly that we received a letter, or I received a letter from Amanda Fritz in response to our advocacy for BOS. So I think that's great that we actually got a letter from her in response to that advocacy. She wrote, "Dear Kyle, thank you for your letter on behalf of the Human Rights Commission expressing your support for BOS and the MLK Junior Workers Center. I nominated BOS to receive funding in the 2013-14 city budget, and I have been a staunch supporter for many years. There is no question that BOS and the center provide vital services. Providing the center with a permanent home and resources must be weighed alongside other desired and needed services in the city budget process for 2014-15. It is an unfortunate fact that the city does not have sufficient resources to fund everything necessary to promote an equitable society. I hope you will advocate for BOS in the next budget process." So we've been invited to do that by a city commissioner, so I think we should continue to do that. Just to, as a refresher, we advocated for the city to provide BOS a permanent home at their workers center by actually donating that property. And that was a big ask. That was a real aspirational thing to do, but it was great. And I've heard from one other commissioner's policy advisor that was a great thing to ask for. Wasn't something that they were able to do, but I actually heard from her and two actually policy advisors that they appreciated our advocacy in that regard, and so we should be following up with that, and I'll talk to Ashley about that on the policy side.
Yeah. And those received funding today, I believe.
Yes, today at City Council, their development director, Gottfried Viatoro, excuse me, was present, and the council did vote unanimously, the 4 people that were present, to give them the $25,000 funding. But as you know, it could still advocate that, I think it's still an open ask from Portland Vos to advocate for that site or another permanent site, and the commissioners were pretty positive.
They're very supportive of BOS. It's just a matter of, what I heard privately was that there are a lot of people who ask for property a lot. And so just giving that to BOS would set a very dangerous precedent.
You know, for an HRC building.
Did we see what we're HRC?
I was just about to go to HRT if we have any report from them.
So I've been reached out to by Linda and Amy regarding collaborating on the event around homeless issues. And so balls in my court, and maybe get back to you guys, and then also organize another meeting.
Excellent.
Talk about that. And I really appreciated having all that up there. So the sooner, if we've already gotten that, if someone could resend it to me, or we could get it, because I'd like to, at our next HRTF meeting, go through those so that we can start strategizing how to address the
Same with HTTF, those are great
Yeah, we'll just send
recommendations,
it to everyone.
and it's like a work plan you did for us. and
Yeah, exactly.
I love it.
Kyle's doesn't count, there are things he's already doing, so. I'm not sure how that looked like.
Okay, well, thanks, everybody. Have a very happy holiday, and we'll see you all on the other side of 2013.
January 8th, remember, we're not meeting, the first Wednesday is January 1st.
Right.
Meeting January 8th.
Thank you, Alan.
If anybody wants to borrow this minute book,
Who's from?
I'm not gonna be up by
you
4.
know, I have postcards about it.
First year's is commitment.
Hey, everybody, Linda was saying something.
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry, I just butted in too. This is the Minidoka book that I spoke about earlier.
Oh, wow.
And anybody who wants to borrow that, plus the fantastic poems on living at that camp as a child by Lawrence Matsuda. And I have postcards about it.
Thank you very much.